Welcome to Stuff They Didn't Teach Me in Sunday School. Have you ever had a situation in which somebody told you something that you really didn't want to hear and it really ticked you off? If you have, you might put yourself in the position of the scribes, Pharisees, and Jewish leadership as Jesus tells them a parable in Mark chapter 12. This is still happening during Holy Week. Mark chapter 12, he tells them a parable. Verse 1, he began to speak to them in parables. A man planted a vineyard. Okay, if you go back to Isaiah chapter 5, verses 1 to 7, or countless other places in the Old Testament, you're going to find out that Israel is often symbolized as God's vineyard. That God plants his vineyard, puts his people in his vineyard, and the nation of Israel is symbolized by that vineyard. So there's a hint here that this is going to be about Israel. He set a hedge around it, dug a pit for the winepress, built a tower, let it out to tenants, went to another country. Still God's vineyard. Those that would argue that, for example, the land today is Israel's don't understand really how God operates. It's his land. He never gives away his land. He allows people to live on it. He never gives away his goods. The stuff that you call yours isn't yours, it's his. If you don't believe that, go to the next funeral and watch and see what that guy gets to take with him. God will just reshuffle the goods. He'll reshuffle the land. He'll reshuffle the money. So in this case, he lets his land out to tenants, and Israel is the tenants on this vineyard. When the time came, he sent a steward to the tenants to get from them some of the fruit of the vineyard. They took him and beat him and sent him away empty-handed. Again he sent to them another servant. They wounded him in the head and treated him shamefully. And he sent another, and him they killed, and so with many others. Some they beat and some they killed. It's a picture of the prophets out of the Old Testament. God keeps sending people to him to tell them they're not bearing fruit. They're not doing what he called them to do, and they keep ignoring the prophets, in some cases kill them. He had still one other, verse 6, a beloved son. Finally he sent him to them, saying, they'll respect my son. But those tenants said to one another, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him, and the inheritance will be ours. And they took him and killed him and cast him out of the vineyard. A picture of what would happen to Jesus later that week as God sent his own son to his vineyard, and his vineyard turned on the son of the owner. What will the owner of the vineyard do? He will come and destroy the tenants and give the vineyard to others. The vineyard becomes the property or the occupied area of the Gentiles in the church. Gentiles share as tenants in this vineyard because the nation to whom the vineyard was originally given rejected it and didn't care for it. Have you not read this scripture, he said, and then he quotes from Psalm 118, the very stone which the builders rejected has become the head of the corner. This was the Lord's doing, and it's marvelous in our eyes. Now they get it. They understand the parable. They understand it very well. Verse 12, they tried to arrest him, but feared the multitude, for they perceived that he told the parable against them. So they left him and went away. At this point in Holy Week, they're ready to arrest him because they understand the parable. They understand it very well. They are the tenants who have abused the people that God has sent them. And they're about to abuse his own son. The conflict section in Mark continues as he's confronted by the Pharisees, and we're told some of the Herodians, these are followers of Herod, who try to trick him. And they ask him a question. The reason this is a tricky question is because the Jews hated the Romans so much. They said, what do you think, Rabbi? Should we pay taxes or not? And Jesus takes a coin, and he says, whose head's on there? He's got a Roman coin, not a temple coin. Oh, the emperor's. Well, then it's his. Give to him what's his. Give to God what's God's. Yeah, you pay taxes. You live in this, he doesn't say that, but that's the implications. You live in this world. You live under Roman rule. You pay taxes to the government. Simple as that. It's a tricky question because they thought that they had Jesus in a corner where if he said, don't pay taxes, they'd go report it to the Romans. And if he said, yeah, do pay taxes, then he'd irritate all the people who hated paying the taxes to the Romans. Instead, he points out the ownership on that coin, the Roman government. Well, that doesn't get it, so the Sadducees take their shot. And they come with some convoluted, awkward thing about if this woman marries a man and he dies, and then she marries his brother and he dies, and marries the next one and he dies, and they got 7 marriages for this woman. And then their question at the end is, whose wife will she be in the resurrection? Wow. Well, first of all, the Sadducees didn't believe in a resurrection, so it's convoluted from that perspective. They don't even believe the premise of their question. And you just got to kind of see Jesus going, oh, you guys don't get it. In fact, his answer is in verse 24. Is this not why you're wrong, that you know neither the Scriptures nor the power of God? We don't have a good starting point here. If you don't know the Scriptures and you know the power of God, how am I going to answer this question? For when they rise from the dead, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. So there's no marriage in heaven. So your question, the premise of your question is ridiculous. As for the dead being raised, have you not read the book of Moses in the passage about the bush, how God said to him, I'm the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob? And Jesus takes a little shot at the Sadducees who don't believe in a resurrection and says, how can God be the God of all these people if there's no resurrection? There's got to be a resurrection, you guys. In verse 27, he's not the God of the dead but of the living, and his summary statement for these Sadducees is, you are quite wrong. You really don't know what you're talking about. You really do not have a clue. And then finally one of the scribes comes up, and I'm not sure if this is an honest question or not, or if this is another trap. But the question is, which commandment is the first of all? Now remember, the scribes are in cahoots with the Pharisees. The scribes and Pharisees have identified 613 laws out of the Old Testament, and they're asking Jesus which is the best one. And they expect Jesus to go, well, I like 496 myself, and then tell them why. Instead, he summarizes the whole thing. He says, the first is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. He actually adds mind to the Old Testament passage. He's in a Greek world, and the Greeks would value the mind. The second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. There's the whole thing. 613 laws boiled down in 2 sentences. Love God, love your neighbor. And in reality, those are the same thing. You love God by loving your neighbor. It's hard to love God without loving your neighbor, because you need a source. You need an object of your love, and that love is the people that God places around you. So love God and love your neighbor, and of course the word he uses is agape, agape being the Greek word that really means have mercy on, pity, serve. Serve God and serve your neighbor. And the scribe says, hey, that's right. Then nobody comes forward with a question, so Jesus poses one himself, and he says, how can the scribe say that Christ is the son of David? And then he goes back to the Old Testament, to Psalm 100. The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand till I put my enemies under thy feet. It doesn't do that well in English. It doesn't even do that well in Hebrew. When you go back to, in Greek, when you go back to Hebrew, it works. Yahweh said to my Adonai. Yahweh said to my Lord, sit at my right hand. And Jesus says, if David calls him Lord, so how's he his son? And they got to be standing there scratching their heads going, I don't know, why did we even try to trap this guy? Now he's got us in a corner. And then Jesus tells his disciples, you be careful of these guys, these scribes and these Pharisees, because they are leading this nation astray. They are not pointing you in the direction of salvation. The story ends with the story of the widow's mite, and the woman who brings in just everything she has and gives out another's offering, and Jesus uses that as an example of sacrificial giving and sacrificial living and a servant attitude. Stands in contrast to what he's been dealing with the leaders of this nation at this point in time who are trying to back him into a corner. Here's a woman who gives everything she has to her Lord. This same Lord would give everything he has for his people. That story's coming up.